Hey everybody, welcome to our special webinar, Mic Check, your 30-day blueprint to podcast launch. I am thrilled to have you joining us as we share insights and tips and ideas to help you launch your podcast in 30 days. Let's get started. I am super excited to be here and for this podcast to take place. My name is Jeff, and I am passionate about podcasting, storytelling, and connecting with people. Now, over the years, I've created and launched 3 successful podcasts. I even joke that I'm a serial podcaster, and I've helped countless others on their path to starting a podcast of their own. So in 2023, with a passion for podcasting, I launched 88 Creative, a podcast and creative agency designed to help others find their voice and amplify it. Everywhere I go, I can't stop talking about podcasting. And I have a strong belief that everyone should have a podcast. Now, I've made all the mistakes you're about to avoid. Now, as I talk about podcasting to literally everyone, I sometimes hear some pushback and have encountered some concerns that people have. So before we start, let's bust a few of those myths that I hear when I talk podcasting with people. The first myth, you need fancy gear to start. Now, the reality is you can launch with what's in your pocket, and we're going to jump into that here tonight. Myth number 2, the market is too crowded. There's always room for authentic voices is the reality. Nobody has your story or your style. Did you know that only 18% of all podcasts today are considered active? So there's huge opportunity, and it's a growing medium. Myth number 3, I don't have time. Now, the reality on this one is you don't need hours, you need a system. And that's what today is about. And as I read recently in Arnold Schwarzenegger's latest book, you're just going to have to learn to sleep faster. I'm working on that one. And lastly, myth number 4, you have to be perfect before you launch, before you publish. Now, the reality is the best podcasts grow in public. Progress beats perfection every time. And I'll share a little bit later in the webinar the greatest advice I've ever received that pertains to this myth. So, if you've believed even one of those myths, you're not alone. I did too, until I launched my first podcast. So by the end of this session, you'll have a clear step-by-step plan to clarify your podcast concept, define your ideal listener, build your launch plan, record your first episode with confidence, and hit publish, all within 30 days. And if you stay to the end, I'll share my podcast launch blueprint, the same system I use with my clients. Let's get started and make your voice heard. We'll start where every great podcast begins, with clarity. Step number 1, clarify your concept. This is probably the most important, to do some back-end work before you begin. Now, what I recommend before starting any great new adventure is to get crystal clear on your why. So ask yourself, why do you want to start a podcast? Who is it for? What is it about? And again, ultimately answer this question. Why are you doing this? This is key. Take the time either now or in the coming hours and days to identify your why. Remember this little nugget. Passion plus purpose will keep you consistent when motivation dips. Now, I love asking this question. If everything went perfectly, what would your podcast accomplish in 6 months? What would it look like a year from now? Seriously, think about that. If everything went as designed and as you had hoped for, what would that look like? This is a great place to start. Now, beware of trying to speak to everyone. Niche beats everyone every single time. Now, I learned this from my first shows. I tried to be everything to everyone. I wanted everyone to listen. I thought of everyone, what they might like, what they might dislike. And spoiler alert, this was a disaster. But I realized I identified my why. I identified who is my audience, and I recorded something just for them. That's what made me stand out. My first show, Guys on the Sideline, is a tongue-in-cheek sports podcast. Now, it's not recorded by ESPN experts. I don't claim to be a sports expert, although I think I've got my girlfriend fooled on this one. There's plenty of those shows out there. What I decided to do instead was to lean into my quirks, to lean into the irrational, the ridiculousness. And that's what it is. It's made up of sports fans venting and talking through their frustrations, their hopes, and their dreams. And once we leaned in, I think we found our secret sauce and our magic, and it was super fun. Just last week, we recorded our 150th episode. They never said we'd make it to 6 or 7 episodes, but look at us now. Here we are. We take shots at ourselves, and we're ridiculous, and it works. We joke about how Peyton and Eli totally copying our style. Sure, they make millions doing their Manning cast, but the truth is, the real guys on the sideline, the guys who started that, you're looking at them. So let's take a moment here and let's define your audience. Picture one ideal listener, their needs, their struggles, their goals. Ask these questions. What problems are they trying to solve? And what value are you adding with your podcast? People tune in for education, entertainment, and inspiration. Ask yourself, what makes you different? Your experience, style, or story really is your superpower. I heard this once at a podcast conference and it stuck with me. And it is, there are riches in the niches. Now I say niches, but you'll get the point. Riches in the niches. And what do I mean by that? Do you know what I believe being a niche podcast, a niche podcast, really zeroing in on your uniqueness makes you become successful? Well, I think because it makes your listeners feel seen and understood. Consider this, a podcast about health and fitness. It's designed for everyone, men and women, old and young, people in shape, people not so in shape. Okay, that's podcast number 1. Podcast number 2 is a wellness podcast for women in their 40s, recorded by women who are trying to reinvent themselves. Hopefully you see the point between the two. The niche podcast is the one that is going to be powerful. The niche podcast is going to help those women in this case feel seen and heard. And an interesting statistic that they have researched is those that are niche are more willing to be engaged, more willing to spend money, and more willing to be better listeners. So remember that as you're considering your podcast. Now, a couple other things that you want to consider. If you can explain your podcast in one sentence, you're ready. If it takes 5 minutes, it's time to simplify. Your name and your tagline should instantly tell listeners who it's for and why they should care. Okay. Once you know what you're creating and who you're talking to, it's time to get the right tools in place without wasting any money. Let's be real. The number one mistake new podcasters make, overbuying gear. You don't need a $400 mic and a studio setup. What you really need is clarity, consistency, and confidence. You don't really need the fanciest mic to begin. Sure, over time, you'll add equipment, you'll add a microphone, and that's totally fine. But right here, right now, as you're beginning a podcast, get going on identifying what you want to talk about. Use the equipment and the tools that you already have, and you're well on your way down that path. My advice is to do just that, to leverage what you already have, to keep it simple, because if you're overthinking the setup, you're likely avoiding the real work, and that is recording. Be honest out there. Who's been down the Amazon rabbit hole pricing microphones? Totally acceptable to do, but I'm here to tell you, you don't need a lot of equipment. You don't need to spend a lot of money getting up and running. So where do we begin? Start with what's free or low cost. Couple of things here. Canva is an excellent tool for graphics, cover art, and episode promos. Audacity or GarageBand, solid free recording editing software. Riverside, something that I use, is great for high quality recording for interviews. Zoom is perfect for getting started if you already use it. The point is, tools don't make your podcast, your voice does. Okay. Again, you don't need a big budget. Your total investment could be $150 to $200. The real investment is your time and creativity. So you see here, we've got a Yeti mic displayed, could be around $100, and you're off and rolling. You've got, headphones. You've got a one-time setup fee. You've got your hosting platform, Buzzsprout. You're up and running. And you've got a recording platform, under $20. So again, $200, and you should be good to go. A few things, just looking at our snapshot here. Recording, you can do that in Riverside, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, where you would actually record the interview. And if you're only using the audio podcast, you'd simply need the MP3 files for that. Editing, we'll talk a little bit more later on this. Descript, Audacity, GarageBand, all great tools that are very cost effective. Hosting, you can use platforms such as Buzzsprout, Podbean, or Simplecast. And to design, Canva, as I mentioned a minute ago, or Fiverr. You can find a designer for really, really cheap to help you design things that you need. Now, I want to walk you through the process. There's really 4 pieces to the process of podcasting: how to record, how to edit, how to upload, and then how to market. So the recording component takes place in Zoom, Teams, Riverside. The editing can be done in Adobe Audition, Riverside, or this can be hired out via Fiverr or Upwork. Then you would upload to the podcast hosting platform such as Buzzsprout, and then hit publish. Now the RSS feed, now don't get caught up on technical jargon. Really, the simple thing that you need to know is once you set it up in the beginning, the RSS feed is where the magic happens. And that is, this feed will go to all the directories such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, and it's going to populate all of the directories and you are good to go. So after you set that up in the beginning, then it's as easy as recording, editing, and hitting upload, and you're off to the races. All right. You've nailed your concept and you're set up. You understand the process. Now it's time to actually make something people want to hear. So we're going to step 3, create our first episodes. Okay. So there's no right podcast format, only what fits your story and your schedule. There are a couple different ones that I want to cover here. Solo podcasts. This one, self-explanatory, is just one person, yourself, recording a podcast. You could also look at another format, and that would be with a co-host. You and a friend, you and a coworker, you and a partner can co-host and have some back and forth banter. There's also a format of guest interview, and this would be interviewing guests, experts, people who have something to say, and you as the host would be the interviewer. And you'd have these folks on and you could glean a lot of information from them. Or number 4, and my recommendation is a combination of all. It's totally okay to have a solo podcast, to have one with co-hosts, and then have interviews, just so long as you're setting that up for the listeners so that they know what they can expect. A mix-up, a combination of all is a great strategy and a great way to go. How long should each episode be? Again, there's really no right or wrong answer. A couple of things that I would share with you. 20 to 30 minutes is a sweet spot. I used to worry that maybe mine were too long. And I learned that I should time it based on the content that I have. Meaning, if I had a compelling interview, it didn't matter the length. It could be an hour, it could be an hour and a half, and that was totally fine. But if I rambled and made my point already, shorter was better. You don't need to continue talking and talking and talking. And so one thing to keep in mind are microcasts are actually quite popular today. Even a 5 to 10 minute episode can be fantastic. At the end of the day, go with your gut. I ask you the question, what length is right for you when you're listening to a podcast? Have you listened to a podcast and you're craving and wanting more? or maybe you're listening to a podcast and you're thinking, man, that was too long. Here's what happens though. If the podcast is too long for the listener, they're either going to put it on double speed or they're going to skip over it. They'll just go to the next episode or they'll go find a new podcast. So just make sure that you keep these thoughts in mind as you're recording these podcasts. And 20 to 30 minutes though is probably a sweet spot. I think they did a study that the average commute in America is about 40 to 45 minutes. So if you think about this, when you record a podcast, if they were 20 minutes a piece, people could listen to 2 podcasts on their way into the office. Or if your podcast is 30 to 40 minutes, consider that is going to be consumed in one commute by your listeners. Okay, your voice is your brand. Remember, people don't connect to information. They connect to you. So let your quirks show. Humor, catchphrases, unique intros, that's what makes it memorable. There's another thought that can be effective, and that's to have recurring segments on your podcast, whether that's a mailbag. Maybe you're taking audience letters or questions. You can have things such as things that you've recently discovered, or maybe something that made you laugh and you want to share that. All of those things can enhance your podcast. And remember, you don't need to sound like a radio announcer. You need to sound like you, confident, curious, and real. And also remember, if you're nervous, that's a good sign. That shows that you care. The best feeling in the world, I tell you, is to hit record and to podcast away. Now, in terms of setting up your podcast, some people will use a script, which is a detailed word for word, kind of paragraph by paragraph outline of the show, as opposed to a bulleted list. This would be key talking points, key things that you want to cover in the interview. And probably a mix is a good way to go, but judge your comfort level. Just being your authentic self and interviewing the guests is the way to go. And I think people will resonate and appreciate that. Now, structure that keeps listeners hooked. There's a couple of components that you can consider. So your introduction, set the hook, maybe tease out what the episode is about. That's probably contained in the title of the episode, but it also helps in the first 30 to 60 seconds to really key in on what the listener can expect. And then you get into your core content. This is probably the 10 to 20 minute, really the meat of the episode. Go deep, stay focused. Then it's recommended to have a takeaway. Why should listeners remember or try? So have something from the episode that you want to leave them with. And then always, always, always in your outro, have a call to action. A call to action being subscribe to the podcast, share the podcast with a friend, sign up for our newsletter, go to our website, whatever that call to action is. Always, always, always make it easy for your listener to take that next step that you would like them to do. Now, back to this, the editing. Editing without overwhelm. Editing shouldn't take longer than recording. Again, as a reminder, there are tools that can help you with this. Descript is an excellent program that can help you. One of the cool things that you'll find in Descript is you can type in a word. Say you say the word a lot. You type in the word and you'll be able to find it, and you'll be able to delete that out of all of your interviews, which is kind of a cool thing. Another couple platforms, Audacity and GarageBand, free, solid entry-level tools. And again, Fiverr and Upwork, if you'd rather spend time podcasting and creating, you can send this over, and depending on the length of the episode, this could be $20 to $30 to have something edited in terms of the quality, the audio quality, but also in terms of cutting it, piecing in the music, making it really, really sing. A couple of pro tips, a couple of ideas. Think in seasons. Now, burnout is real, and you should be advised of that. So as a creator, it doesn't matter if you're creating as a podcaster, as an author, as an artist, as a musician. You want to look for those things that help you keep it fresh and keep you as the creative fired up and loving what you're doing. And so seasons can be a great way to go. Plan for 8 to 12 episodes in a season. That's enough to find your rhythm. You can batch record, which is really, really cool, so that you can stay ahead and avoid scrambling each week. You're not building a hamster wheel, you're building rhythm. So key to keep in mind. All right, you've recorded your first few episodes. Congratulations. And now let's make sure people recognize your show instantly and can find it everywhere. Remember this, your podcast is a brand. This section is visual, it's energizing, and a natural momentum builder before you close with your launch strategy. Okay, so let's create some things. Cover art that pops. Your first impression really, really matters. Here are a few examples. Now, granted, these are big name podcasts, but there's a couple things I want to point out here. Your cover art is the billboard for your show. So keep it simple, bold, and readable at thumbnail size. Use high contrast colors, big fonts, and minimal text. Canva really can be your best friend at creating your artwork. And again, remember, Fiverr or Upwork, you could pay maybe $20 to $50, worth every penny to have this done and ready to go for you. So keep that in mind. Music and intros create consistency and brand recall. Now, there are a lot of royalty-free sources. Soundstripe, YouTube's audio library, there's a whole list of these folks that can provide you some really good assets. Keep your intro short, 15 to 20, 25 seconds, somewhere like that is a way to go. Now, somebody explained this to me once, and it's never left me, and that's to think of your intro as a handshake. It's friendly, it's confident, and it's instantly recognizable. So keep that in mind when you're creating and getting set up. Your podcast isn't just an audio file. It's also an ecosystem. So the cover art that we saw a few slides ago, episode graphics, show notes, social posts, all of these tools reinforce your identity. You also want to make sure that it's shareable. Your goal is for someone to recognize your content mid-scroll, so they identify with it, and then it again sings and it's shareable. All right. We want to make it easy to find you. As I stated a few minutes ago, initially you're going to set this up in Buzzsprout or another hosting platform. They will host your audio files, and then they'll also push to the directories. But keep this in mind. It's important. Make sure your show description and your tags include searchable keywords. People often glance or read at your description before they ever hit play. So make sure that you take the time to invest up front to make sure that it's a show that people are going to want to tune into. Okay, now I want to share a few things I've learned the hard way, and that is, and I've heard this from other podcasters as well, you put a lot of hard work into gaining listeners, and the easiest way to lose a listener is to stop being consistent. If you drop off, sadly, so will probably your listeners. Seasons are great, as I mentioned, but be advised, if you take a break, have a plan for getting listeners to return once you do. It's super, super important. Okay. Okay. It's time to launch. Your show looks amazing, sounds great, and it's live everywhere. Now is the big moment. A couple of things that I recommend. Prior to your launch, you should tease your creation, your podcast, on social media, at work, with your family, with people you don't even know. This is happening. Your hard work is here. And so you want to create that buzz, build that excitement. You could do something like, on January 1st, this is happening. Or stay tuned, big announcement in February, something like that. You want to build the momentum. For the launch of one of my other podcasts, Life in the Carpool Lane, where I shared experiences as an Uber driver, I came up with clever posts teasing it, jokes, memes, tapping into pop culture and things like this. And it built a buzz, and a lot of people were excited to hear, like, what is this creation that Jeff is doing? So you want to make sure that you take the time. You've created this amazing podcast and you want it to really land very, very well. So keep that in mind. Again, first impressions matter. You want to record a trailer, something that people, when they come, the first thing they hear is, what is the podcast about? A trailer often is a summary. It can be 1 to 2 minutes, and it's a great thing that lives at the top in Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And so as new people are coming in, that is a great thing that you want to devote some time and energy to creating just the perfect teaser in your trailer. I recommend posting 2 or 3 episodes on launch day. That way, you've built the momentum, people are excited, and now they can binge your podcast. Get them to share it, like it, give those call to actions right from day one. You want people to get engaged and get hooked. And then after you've launched, it's important, as we stated, to be consistent and making sure that people, again, can trust you and know when to expect your podcast episodes to launch. So there are things that you can do. Hype before the mic, as we say here. You can share behind the scene clips, bloopers, or recording setup, things like this. Post your cover art. Ask for feedback. Which version do you like better? Often as you pose questions like this, people will take an interest in it. They will engage, and it becomes more and more memorable. Once you've launched, post clips and quotes from each episode. You can also repurpose show notes into blog posts, LinkedIn articles, or emails. You literally could turn one episode into 5 pieces of content. And really, the best podcasters do this. You can repurpose all the time and keep it fresh and keep it top of mind for people. Done consistently, small moments compound into big growth. Now, one thing that I've learned as well, if you have guests, it's often a great tactic to have your guests share it with their audience. So now you're expanding. I know a lot of people, when they are an interviewee on a podcast, they want to share it from the rooftops. It's a big deal. And so create graphics for them, help them with the tools, with the links that they need so that they can share that and cross promote. Pay attention to what resonates and double down on it. Okay. Final thought here. Done is better than perfect. This is so true. You don't have to have it all figured out before you start. Your first episode won't be the best one, and that's okay. Think about a television show, whether that be Seinfeld or Friends. If you go back and you watch that first season, they often are trying to gain their footing, their character development, right? All of these things. And as you look back, they never would have got to season 2, 3, 4, or 5 to the good ones, really, without that first season. And I'm not saying your first episodes are going to be terrible, but trust me, your first episodes, they're going to be things that you're going to learn from, but you need to do it in order to gain those lessons and to advance the podcast. Remember, the best podcast isn't the one with the perfect intro. It's the one that's actually published. All right. So if you're still with us, we've covered the full 5-step framework from idea to launch. And now I want to leave you with one simple piece of advice, the best advice that shaped everything that I have done in the podcasting space. The best advice I've received in talking to a friend and overanalyzing things and wondering this and that. And my friend turned to me and said, Jeff, just start. And that was what I needed to hear. And I think that is so true in podcasting, or really in any goal that you have. The best thing is to start. You're never going to feel 100% ready, but the moment you start, momentum takes over. All right. In a second here, we're going to do a Q&A. So feel free to drop those in some questions in the Q&A, and we'll get to as many of those as we can. But your next step, remember, you don't have to do this alone. If you're serious about launching your podcast, but don't want to do it alone, I would love to help. And I'll drop this in the chat later, and that is a link to set up a time to talk with me. It's a free, no obligation call. As I stated, I love podcasting. I love talking about podcasting. I'd love to hear your ideas. And if it's something that you would like help with, I would be honored to help you do that. There were a lot of places you could have been tonight, and I just want to say thank you for taking a few minutes and being here. And hopefully this was helpful, that there was something that resonated with you, that you recognize that each one of us, if we have a goal and we get clear on our concept and what we want to accomplish, we can launch that podcast, we can tackle that goal, and we can make it happen. Okay, I'm going to jump into the Q&A. First one, Sam asks, what podcasts do you listen to for inspiration? Really good question. There are a lot of podcasts that I listen to and that I like. The first one that I ever started listening to, and I still listen to it to this day, is How Stuff Works from Josh and Chuck. Anybody listening to this podcast? It's great. It's a couple of goofy guys, and they just talk about how stuff works. And they go through and they talk about, just random topics. And they, anyway, cover that. That's a really good one. I also like the All In podcast. This is a group of entrepreneurs that share their wisdom on tech and on investing, gambling, business opportunities, and that has been a really good one. One of the things I like about the All In podcast is I feel like every time that I listen to the podcast, that I find myself like coming alive, like they're really engaging. The topic, the show is really inspiring to me. And so it's something that I really, really like to listen to. So, all right, Ray, thanks for being here. Ray sends kind words. So thank you, Ray. An anonymous attendee. What's the biggest mistake you made when you first launch? Really good question. As I stated, I think you can overanalyze things to death. And I think what I found is most people enjoy podcasts from people that are real. Sure, there are like NPR shows or shows that are really well edited and polished, but the fact that any of us can have a voice and have a podcast and just putting your voice out there, I think is awesome. And I think listeners respond to that. As I stated earlier, again, I think this answers the question too, and that is trying to be everything to everyone. Once I let that go and just said, you know what, I'm going to make this happen, and we're just going to roll with it. That's when I think I loosened up. That's when I think the show really took off, and I think listeners responded to it, which was really, really good. Chanda asks, I gave up on my podcast for many reasons, but one big issue I couldn't figure out was editing. I often sounded like I had a lisp. I'm not sure it was the mic or the editing system or some setting. Really good question. And hard to know specifically, but generally speaking, I would say a couple of things. One of the things that I played around with was using a microphone, again, whether headphones, whether a microphone like the one that I'm talking into right now, and recording things. Now, you don't have to publish, but recording when you're closer to the microphone, when you're further from the microphone, and maybe finding the right space to be. There are a lot of tools I would mention as well. Descript has them. Buzzsprout has some as well. And that is the beauty of AI. They have the ability to do magic and to make voices, kind of clean them up, if you will, and to make things that maybe you're not proud of sound even better. And I will say one thing too, and it's very, very true. Our voices sound differently to ourselves than they do to the listeners. Oftentimes it's reported, right? People hate the sound of their own voice, or maybe it sounds a little bit funny to them. The interesting thing is I don't think the listeners are hearing maybe some of the things that you hear. So keep that in mind. Christy asks, what is the biggest thing that you have learned podcasting? Really good question. I think the biggest thing that I've learned through the podcast experience is kind of evolving as you go. I think I started, again, I'm a serial podcaster. So I had an idea of where I wanted something to go. And as I recorded it, as I thought about it, as time passed, as I had different guests and visitors on, the podcast has kind of evolved. And I think that's kind of a cool thing. Like any artist, I think as you create and put yourself out there, you'll find what resonates and you'll find what you're proud of and you'll make adjustments. Which is really, really good. What if I don't like My own voice from Anonymous. Good question. Well, I would submit to you that your listeners probably do. So I say put it out there. And maybe over time, like I just said in the previous question too, is that your voice will evolve. You'll get better. I think back of if anybody knows Pat Flynn, he's actually one of the people that was really inspirational for me early on. And Pat Flynn talks about how he was a terrible communicator. He couldn't really deliver a presentation, and he struggled with this. Well, I listened to Pat Flynn either on his podcast or on his YouTube channel, wherever, and I think he is one of the better presenters that I've ever heard. Again, he's taught me how to podcast. And so I would say to you, put yourself out there. It's scary. I get it, but put yourself out there. And I promise you'll get better. And maybe at some point you'll you'll be comfortable with your voice. Another question. What was your funniest moment? What was the funniest thing that ever happened on your podcast? You know, I would say to this one, I think when you have a co-host or you have somebody that you're going into a podcast with, you kind of have a rough outline of where the show is going to go, right? I think that's how I've recorded my podcasts. And sometimes it goes a different place, or sometimes you like I've had moments where you say funniest, like we just, and it's not me that I'm cracking myself up, but the back and forth, like it just is, it turns out to be a kind of ridiculous and funny. And so when you hit record, you don't necessarily know where you're going to go. But you just kind of get there, and you learn to laugh along the way. Okay. Let's do one more question. Should you go right to iTunes, or should you start with a smaller distribution platform? Really good question. My recommendation, again, I would go into the podcast platform, hosting platform, and that is Simplecast, or I use Buzzsprout, and I would set everything up there because I have found there's a great way to capture analytics, and there's a great way to analyze things that are working, maybe things that aren't working. And so I recommend going that route and then pushing out to, again, setting that up, and it'll push automatically to all of the places that you want to be. So, all right, one last question. We lied. One more. This is really, really good. Audio versus video, or both? I think originally audio was where it was at. And then players such as Spotify has added a video component. And now I think everybody is trying to catch up. And what you're seeing is YouTube has become one of the largest platforms for podcasting. Now, it's kind of interesting, right? Because most podcasts, there's not graphics, there's not any fancy editing. It's literally a person sitting in front of a microphone like this. But there's something engaging about it that more and more people are finding this. And this is in the works. I read an article about it the other day. Not sure where it stands as of late, but Netflix is looking to get into the podcasting space. And so very interesting. If Netflix is getting into it, YouTube is getting into it, and all the people are trying to keep up with Spotify for adding video, you can probably bet that video is a great thing to be involved in the future. And it's a lot of fun. So those are our recommendations. Again, thank you so much for being here and joining on a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. As I stated, I have a passion for podcasting, and I would love to keep in touch and hear about your podcasting journey, whether we work together or not. I'll send an email with this recording, also with that blueprint that I promised in the beginning, and a link should you want to have a conversation and get your podcast launch in 30 days. It would be my great honor to make that happen and to walk alongside you. So thank you so much for tuning in, and have a great night, everybody. Happy podcasting.